Madam Chief Justice, Your Honors, and may it please the Court. My name is Michael Johnson, and I, along with my co-counsel, Kelly Kearney, represent the respondent in this matter, Ms. Kimberly Clark. I will be addressing the second issue, whether Ms. Clark's First Amendment right to free speech was violated when Pleasantville High School suspended her for expressing her political opinions on her private Facebook page. Your Honors, this case is nothing more than an impermissible attempt of a school to reach beyond the schoolhouse gates and regulate political speech with a mere tangential connection to the school and its students, thereby stripping the student of her constitutionally protected right to free speech. Therefore, this Court should affirm the 14th Circuit holding and find that Ms. Clark's speech was not subject to school regulation for the following two reasons. First, Ms. Clark's speech did not have the requisite nexus to Pleasantville High School because it was off-campus student speech. Second, Ms. Clark's speech did not result in a material disruption or a violation of any student's right to feel secure at Pleasantville High School. Moving to the nexus analysis. This Court has previously regulated student speech in three cases. First, in Hazelwood v. Kumeyer, the student speech was proffered and circulated in a student newspaper. Second, in Bethel v. Frazier, the student was made at a public student assembly and directed at the student body at large. And third, in Morse v. Frederick, the student speech was made on a banner that was strung across the street from the school. Notably, here in this case, there was no nexus to the school.
So is it your position that a nexus means that the speech has to occur either in the school or directly across the street?
No, Your Honor. Although the previous cases have restricted the nexus to those definitions, respondent asked this Court adopt a nexus test that can address the content and the audience of posts, and both of which are sufficient enough to invoke the school's jurisdiction would create a nexus. However, the contents and the audience of this post do not invoke the school's jurisdiction.
Well, the content is about a student, it's written by another student, and it's directed to another group of students. So how would that not meet the requirements under your test?
Your Honor, the post vaguely describes the school, and it does address the student, yes. However, the audience of the post is clearly at issue here. Ms. Clark's post was private. She made it from the confines of her bedroom. She posted it to a selected Facebook audience.
Was that audience, was it made up of other high school students that went to the same particular school?
Your Honor, the record does not indicate that fact. However, she did state in her affidavit, as indicated on page 23 of the record, that she intended for just her Facebook community to receive this message. And notably, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Cardona, and no member of the transgender community was a member of that Facebook community. Those who were likely in a position to receive her message and understand her perspective and point of view.
Are there cases that say we should look at her intent or who it should go to?
This Court, no, has not looked to an intent analysis. However, several circuits have analyzed cases that have looked to whether a student or a school can regulate student speech that was made on social media. All circuits that have analyzed whether student social media was subject to school regulation did look at whether there was a private or public element to this post.
Can you really consider a post being private that is made on Facebook? Yes, she makes it while she's sitting in her bedroom, but she's making it on Facebook. Is that really considered private?
Your Honor, yes, there are elements of Facebook that are not inherently private, such as the hypothetically post my co-counsel, because this is not a written written form in her diary. However, it is akin to the situation that you mentioned earlier to my co-counsel, and this is the equivalent of Ms. Clark sitting down in a room with her friends and family gathered and expressing her political frustrations. And yes, she referenced a school student. However, the gossip does not create a nexus to the school. If someone told Ms. Anderson about the contents of the post, if it was communicated orally in a family room or at the dinner table.
But she also references a specific school policy. And as your co-counsel pointed out, your co-counsel is arguing that the fact that she references this specific school policy makes it political. You're seeming to argue that it's vague and we don't know what school she's referring to, so there's no connection to the school. So how do you reconcile those two arguments with each other?
She does reference the school policy, however, the implications of her Facebook posts and how they bear on the actions and the activities of the school itself are vague. She merely states that Ms. Anderson should watch out at school, which is, as my co-counsels alluded to, a figure of speech. And the majority of her post is political and religious in nature, and that's what the First Amendment stands for, and that's to permit students and individual private citizens to express their political opinions. And that takes me to my second point. Even if this court does find the requisite nexus between Ms. Clark's post and Pleasantville High School, the court then must conduct an analysis as set forth under the seminal case of Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, and that is the case that permits a school to regulate student speech. And student speech is subject to regulation when 3 circumstances arise at a school, and any 3 of these prongs must be satisfied in order for this court to find that Ms. Clark's speech was subject to regulation. First, student speech is subject to regulation if a material disruption occurs on campus. Second, if a reasonably foreseeable material disruption occurs on campus. And 3, if a violation of the student's right to feel secure occurs. None of those 3 circumstances were present at Pleasantville High School following Ms. Clark's speech.
Isn't the third present here because the girl did not feel comfortable at school and she actually stayed out of school for a couple days?
This court has yet to hear a case that necessitated a thorough definition of the third prong. However, the Ninth Circuit in Harper versus Toway defined the right to feel secure as freedom from physical and psychological attacks. And although Ms. Anderson was uncomfortable and observed to be visibly upset, this observation was made by a third party, and that was Principal Franklin, who had the objective to suspend Ms. Clark for her controversial Facebook posts. And harkening back to the definition proffered in Harper versus Toway, there was no attack, there was no requisite element of an intent to communicate whatever the hypothetical attack is that the petitioner is arguing.
What do you mean there was no intent? She specifically calls her out and says, Taylor, you better watch out at school. She's communicating that threat directly to Taylor.
She communicated it to her private Facebook group, and she stated in her affidavit and swore under oath that she intended only members of that Facebook community to receive that message. And that's not.
She's aware that it gets outside of her friend group, and she is making a threat specifically to Taylor in the second paragraph, is the way I read it.
This does not rise to a true threat, as my co-counsel alluded to. Further, the message was not communicated directly to Ms. Anderson, so it could not be construed as attack.
Any weight to the fact that she seems to be targeting a specific group, not only Taylor, but all transgender students?
Yes, however, this is a political expression and a religious expression. She stated in her affidavit and her father's affidavit that she believes transgender, the process of transgender transformation from female to male or vice versa to be against God's law. And once again, this is speech that was made outside of the school environment. She did not confront Ms. Anderson in the hallways and state this. Further, in Harper versus Toway, in that case, the student at issue walked into the school with a shirt that said homosexuality is shameful. However, that student brought that message directly into the hallways, whereas once again, Ms. Clark's speech and her communication was made from the privacy of her bedroom and expressed it to a select group of individual students and friends and family members who comprised the Facebook community.
Isn't it true that a school, having been presented with this information that there was this Facebook post and that there was this threat or whatever you want to call it to this particular group of people, would be prudent to take action to prevent there being a problem at school, and that action being suspend the student for 3 days to make sure that student gets the message that you better not do anything in the future? So wouldn't it be prudent for the school take action to avoid there being any kind of problem?
Yes, and this court in Morse permits the school to intervene before violence erupts on campus following student speech. However, in this case, school administrators and Principal Franklin took no reasonable steps that could lead a jury to find that they believe violence to be imminent on campus. Principal Franklin merely met with Ms. Clark, suspended her for her speech, did not take any preventative measures to ensure that the two did not encounter each other in the hallways. They did not make any stipulations that Ms. Clark and Ms. Anderson don't play on the same basketball team together. He merely observed them to be upset and took action based on that. And this court cautioned in Tinker for a school not to censor speech because of the mere desire to avoid discomfort and unpleasantness that always accompanies an unpopular viewpoint. And that's clearly what we have here. Ms. Clark expressed controversial stances on the school policy and expressed her religious opposition to Ms. Anderson's sexual identity. And she is fully entitled to that under the protection of the First Amendment. And here, following that statement, not only was she wrongfully suspended, but after returning to school, the two students carried out their day-to-day business without issue. There were no further issues, and that leads to a finding that Ms. Clark, once again, was merely expressing political frustration. She had no history of violence. She, again, stated this post in jest, and this draws back to Ms. Clark's affidavit on page 23, where she made the comments about transgender being another word for freak of nature and referring to transgender students as being in jest. And as controversial and uncomfortable that is, she did use all caps when making reference to all of those phrases.
So I want to take you back to the nexus argument. You would agree that in today's day and age with the social media, it does need to extend at least some way past the schoolhouse gates, correct?
Yes.
So what facts would need to be present in this case for you to concede that there was a nexus?
Respondent would argue that the Fifth Circuit case of Bell v. Itawamba School Board.
If you could just tell me specifically in this case, what facts would need to be present?
If Ms. Clark's post was public, if her privacy settings were not private but instead public, and perhaps if she tagged Ms. Anderson and directed this communication in any way, shape, or form towards the student at issue or the transgender community at issue, and if she did not state in her affidavit that she meant this in jest and that she perhaps fully intended for her to carry out some kind of violent action against Ms. Anderson and the transgender community, that would constitute circumstances that would permit the school to have A, jurisdiction over Ms. Clark's speech, and B, if there were circumstances at the school that gave rise to a finding that satisfied the Tinker test, that would permit the school to regulate Ms. Clark's speech. First, moving back to the Tinker test, not only was there not a reasonably foreseeable material disruption, but there was no material disruption on campus. This court has found that instances of canceled classes or canceled school activities or upheaval amongst the students is a material disruption. Here, we have a group of students who were, yes, upset due to an uncontroversial and probably distasteful Facebook post. However, this is a mere de minimis.
Have there been any cases that found that where students don't go to school for a couple days is enough to be material disruption? Or have there been any cases that have addressed that at all?
In this court's jurisdiction, this court has not heard a case where...
Have any lower circuits considered that?
There have been. I do not have those right in front of me. However, the District Court of Oregon in Burge versus Colton School District, there was an instance where a student made a Facebook post that said a teacher should be shot, and she protested return to campus as a result. However, that court found that was not a reasonably foreseeable material disruption because the student didn't have any propensity for violence, and the post was made in jest. And those are very similar facts to the case at bar.
Is the only indication that you have that the post was made in jest this affidavit from your client?
Yes, Your Honor.
So other than that, there's no independent evidence that she did not intend the statement that she made on Facebook?
No, and no, this court need not hear any or see any affidavits to take Ms. Clark's word that she meant it in jest. She was, again, targeting towards the Facebook community that understood her